Private jailbreak news. So we got a pretty big one here. The release of the new Labs exploit by ABC, which of course is the implementation of the kernel IO exploit that we've been covering in the previous updates here, which could lead us to new jailbreaks on the PS4 and PS5 on higher firmwares. So the release here coming to us from ABC, who was the person who I believe originally discovered this in the first place. As I said in one of my previous videos, you know, we might be waiting a long time for an implementation if it has to be done from scratch, but more likely there's probably somebody who already has a working version in private and is working on it for releasing it now that the information's out there. So that appears to be what has happened. ABC has released a working implementation here. So this is the original post where ABC says happy to release the Labs exploit, a kernel exploit for PS4 5.0, 12.50 and PS5 1.00, 10.20. It's minimal patches for PS4 8.0x only right now. Other firmwares must be ported. So the only implementation of this works on firmware 8.0 on the PS. For no other firmwares have been added but it's most likely just offsets that need ported to get the other firmwares working. So that will happen, you know. Over time, we'll get other firmwares supported. Then also kernel read writes must be ported to PS5. So it's only working on PS for right now. You can similarly walk proc p_fd. But remember that file description changed in Freebs 11. So just about how to kind of port it over to work with PS5. And no HV exploits contributions for porting are welcome. Chaining with any hypervisor exploit. We'll leave the full PS5 exploit chain to forkers. Our repo will remain for demo purposes for kernel read and write. So yeah, ABC's just released this and letting everybody else create forks to port it to PS5 and other firmwares. And all of that kind of stuff. And chain it with maybe existing hypervisor exploits. If people want to run it on, you know, firmwares that have hypervisor exploits for PS5, then they can do that. So we now have the initial release. So we're gonna start seeing a flood of updates for porting it to other firmwares and getting it working on PS5 You need to be on PS4 8.0 in order for this to work until it's ported to other PS4 firmware. So just to kind of test it out, I went ahead and reverted my reversible PS4 down to 8.0 firmware and gave this a try. So if you want to test it, you just download the zip file here, open it up, which contains the files. Then all you have to do is just extract that and then run a web server in that folder that you can access on the PS4. And from there, I was able to run it. Now, whenever I run it, I just get these undefined errors. It looks like it's looking for a missing file code _MGS, which it's not found. So I'm not sure if that is missing deliberately or not, but it's not able to get any further. But if I kind of freeze frame during the execution of the exploit here, you can see the full exploit as it's running there from start to finish. So that is the results that I had here running on my 8.0 system with this now. This is running through WebKit because it's using the PS3 WebKit exploit. And now this will not work above firmware, I believe 9.60 on the PS4. Just because the WebKit exploit of 3 only works up to that point, and then it was patched afterwards. So unfortunately, this particular implementation will not work past 9.60 on PS4. And it should not work past 5.50 on the PS5. So of course, if we want to get this working on higher firmwares, we'll need to chain it with a different userland exploit, which will of course be the Lua exploit, which works on the latest firmwares for the PS4 and PS5. So that will have to be used with this, unless we get a new WebKit exploit some point in the future. So that is the situation with this right now. It's only working on 8.0 It will get ported to other firmwares fairly quickly, I assume, and then of course, it needs to be paired with the Lua exploit to get it working on higher firmwares. So that's the situation right now. And then it also needs to be ported to PS5. So still a lot of work that has to go into this until we have a working jailbreak where we can run Gold Hen on higher firmwares on the PS4 and obviously running things like ETA Hen on higher firmwares with this on the PS5. Still a long way to go. But this certainly has opened the floodgates here. Now looking at this, it does make it look like it supports up to 12.50 on the PS4 and 10.20 on the PS5. But it actually means less than 10.20 and less than 12.50 on the PS4. So that would be 12.0 would be the highest firmware that this supports on the PS4.
And of course 10.0
1 would be the highest firmware supports on the PS5. And as if that news wasn't good enough,
looks like
Zigo has been teasing a potential new hypervisor exploit for the PS5 for 3.x and for .x firmware. So maybe don't think about updating your PS5 firmware version just yet. If you're on 3.0 to 4.51
So
for
anyway,
now. That's the situation with this
I do
news.
have
a bunch of other topics to dive into here because I was planning a jailbreak update video before this news came out. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the other topics
I also want to cover
Most
here.
of this stuff here is for PlayStation 5.
I'll try
and go through these in more of a rapid fire
So we got a new
version of K-Stuff from Echo Stretch. That is version 1.5 as a few new features. The ability to disable ASLR by skipping the check by buzzer read, which is address space layout randomization. It basically kind of jumbles up where things are stored in memory each time that you load it. So if you're trying to find cheats,
it can be
kind of difficult
because you can't just
rely on a static memory address to point to a certain instruction. Because whenever you reload the game or restart the console, things will be loaded into a different section of memory. And therefore, that address will no longer point to that instruction. So you have to use other techniques to get around that. So being able to disable this should make it easier. For developing cheats on the PS5. We also have a PSVR to bypass by all, which should help trying to get PSVR2 games working through K-Stuff. And also added remaining offsets for 3.10. So if you're having any problems with K-Stuff on that firmware
you might
version,
have
better success with this new version. Also, this version has been included in a new build of ETA Hen, which is ETA Hen version 2.2b. This is just a test build at the moment. It's not an official release. So for the most part, the only real change is that it includes this new K-Stuff version. When we do get an official release of ETA Hen 2.2b, it will most likely have more features included. But for now, anyway, you can use this test build, which includes the new version of K-Stuff to load along with it. And you can access this on Zico's host here on Zico, xo.github.io/Lewisoss, and you'll be able to load it from there. There's also been some improvements to the Blu-ray Java of the exploit here on Victorious X's repo. So these developments come from Benix_XD. So the main improvement is when you run the pipeline which runs the full chain exploit of the kernel exploit, the elf loader, and then edhen for you. It will now automatically close the displayer for you on pretty much all the supported firmwares now. So instead of you having to close the displayer yourself, it just does it automatically. So you just have to load one option on the ESO, like the normal jailbreak or the all-in-one option, and then it will run the entire thing. Close the displayer for you, and you'll end up back on the homepage with the TA running and the console jailbroken. So pretty awesome stuff there. Now when you run the all-in-one option, it now checks the USB drive to see if you have any updated payloads on a USB
that's connected
drive
to the PS5.
So it will load those instead of any older ones that are on the disk. And then if you don't have a USB
it can also
drive check the data folder on the hard drive for updated payloads. So you can also store them there as well. If you want to update the payloads for it to load, instead of having to burn the disk again to get updated payloads on the disk itself. So that's a handy feature that's been included in this version along with a few other improvements. Now there's also been a similar improvement to the Lua which allows you to run the full chain exploit without having to manually send the Lua files one by one from your computer. So this is from its PLK and in here in the save data folder. We have this new PS5 Lua loader. You can put this folder on the root of a USB, again in the data folder on the internal storage. And it will prioritize the USB first, then the internal storage, and then the save file. Because you can also have this on the save file itself and load it from there. So you can load it from these 3 different locations. So you have to basically update your save file for the Lua exploit with all of the files here, and then basically put this folder on a USB or the and then from there storage. You can add whatever payloads you want to load. So by default, it has an FTP payload here. And this auto load text file has the name of the payload for it to load. So basically, you would just swap this out with like ETA and put the ETA hen payload in this folder. And then just get rid of the FTP server and change it to ETA hen.bin. And then you should be good to go from there. And it will load everything for you in addition to that. And BenixXD has also added this payload that you can add at the kernel-level. And this will do the same thing that the Blu-ray Java does now, which is close the game once it's finished executing all of the payloads. So you can also add this payload as the last in the autoloader for the exploit to run. And then that way it can, run, say, K stuff. And then after it runs K stuff, it will run the kernel-level, which will automatically close it. So it'll basically be an all-in-one option. You just run the Lua game. And then it will automatically load the save file, which will run the UMTX kernel exploit. Then the ELF loader automatically. And then any payloads that you put in the autoload.txt file, like ETA, hen, or K stuff. And then once that's loaded, it will run the kernel-level game ELF, which will then close the game. And you'll have the exploit fully up and running. All you had to do was launch the game. So another good improvement there. And the last thing that I want to cover here is that we have the first full release now of FPKGI SO version 1.0. All the previous versions were pre-release builds. But now we have the first full release from its jokers. And this adds a lot of support for PS5. So we have things like zip download support for downloading, extracting and installing zip files, PS5 dump extraction, PS5 dump extraction for items flow integration, zip installation order so zip packages now install alphabetically, prioritizing numbers and symbols, and jailbreak compatibility, improved compatibility using a whitelisted jailbreak on PS5. And you can close the application by pressing circle twice. So this is a pretty big deal. Being able to not just install PS for fake packages using this, but you could also now use it to install PS5 packages as well, by essentially just having your PS5 games stored as a maybe just the extracted folder or in a zip file, which you can then index with the JSON files in FP. And then download them from your computer or your server, or from the web. And you'll be able to just download them directly onto the PS5 and integrate it with items flow. Probably just scan for apps with items flow, and it will find the ones that were downloaded with FPKI. And you'll be able to run them from there. So yeah, some big improvements there with FPKI as well. Now supporting PS5 game dumps, as well as your traditional PS for fake packages. There's actually been a bunch of other updates. I don't want to make this video too long. The main thing is this new labs kernel exploit release. So we'll have to see where that goes. I'm sure we'll see lots of updates for this happening pretty rapidly. So I'll likely have another video coming very soon with the latest updates here. So anyway, hope